Hello, heathens, and welcome to Cult News, episode 8. It has been quite a while. It's been 3 weeks since I last went live with Cult News. So my microphone cable finally ate shit and died. You may have known if you've watched earlier streams that I had some audio issues. I broke the cable a while ago, but for the longest time I was able to finagle it to get the connector straightened out and it would work, and then finally a few weeks ago it stopped working, and then this specific model of Audio-Technica mic from 2020 uses their own made up cable, so you can't just go to the store and buy a new USB cable for it. It's their own discontinued specific cable. So I had to after searching all over every single store, everything online, they didn't even have it in the Canadian store, so I had to contact the company and PayPal them the payment, and they FedExed the cable to me, which was nice because then I only had to pay $15 US to replace the cable instead of buying a new mic. So yeah, that's it. I don't know what else I've been doing these past 3 weeks. Tried playing guitar again and learning some new vocal practices, which has been really fun actually. Today's Canada Day, so I have the day off. And that's about it. Have to go back to work in the office next week. Absolutely dreading it. So I have a pile of cult news here that I've been saving for when I got my cable replaced. And it's actually not as much as I thought. I did cut out a couple articles that just weren't very newsworthy. But some big cult news has happened in recent weeks. And if you follow any other cult news outlets, I saw Telltale on YouTube. He did cover one of these topics that we're gonna go over first. So yeah, definitely some interesting stuff in here. So yeah, the first article I have pulled up here is on armytimes.com. Nationwide FBI raids target alleged cult near 5 army posts by Davis Winky. And I saw that name before I started streaming, and I was I cannot laugh at the name because I am too old, but the name is very amusing to me. I'm sorry, Davis. Okay, serious business now. The FBI joined with oh my god, I'm not used to speaking now, so not that I didn't screw up my words before, but the FBI joined with local law enforcement agencies last week to raid at least 5 churches near army installations associated with an alleged cult that critics say preys on service members and veterans. The agency executed warrants across the United States on Thursday, though no arrests were made, and the FBI has been tight-lipped about what, if anything, they found. FBI spokesperson Tina Jagerson confirmed that local field offices had performed court-authorized law enforcement activity, a term that frequently refers to executing a search warrant near 5 House of Prayer Christian church locations. And then these are locations: Hepzibah, Georgia, near Fort Gordon; Hinesville, Georgia, near Fort Stewart; Fayetteville, North Carolina, near Fort Bragg; Killeen, Texas, near Fort Hood; and Tacoma, Washington, near Joint Base Lewis McChord. I'm sure I pronounced every single one of those incorrectly. Jagerson said the agency had no further comment or information at this time and did not respond to a follow-up question about whether the raids were linked. It's not clear whether the 5 targets represent all of the church's locations or if there are active locations near other bases. Allegedly operates like a cult. It's also not clear why authorities are investigating the organization, though nonprofit Veterans Education Success wrote a letter to federal and Georgia authorities in 2020 that accused the church of operating like a cult and running a sham seminary program to siphon millions of dollars off GI Bill benefits from soldiers and veterans. The letter also said the FBI may have been investigating potential mortgage fraud by the organization. The letter and Augusta Chronicle interviews with former members reveal a cult of personality around preacher Ronnie, who founded the first House of Prayer church in 2004. In the letter, anonymous former members of the church and seminary students recounted how their classes, when they weren't canceled in favor of recruiting trips or cleaning work, were taught in rundown buildings where Dennis would listen in via conference call and force students to break into prayer whenever he interrupted. A former member told the Augusta Chronicle that Dennis used the teleconference system to connect all of the churches at the same time. Someone could be preaching or singing a song, and when the Polycom rang, you heard it through the PA system, and everybody had to sit and listen to Dennis. No seminary students ever received academic records or a completion certificate either, according to the letter from Veterans Education Success. One former member cited in the letter said they attended one of the church's seminaries for 12 years and exhausted their education benefits. Program requirements, tuition rates, and the course designs would reportedly change in order to keep students enrolled. And the federal money flowing, church parishioners were also encouraged to seek out 100% disability ratings for false conditions to give more VA money to the church, the letter alleged. Women are strong-armed into living in group homes, the letter claimed, with active duty female members being harangued about the perceived danger of living in the barracks. The church also allegedly intimidates those who try to leave, with one former member telling Veterans Education Success that a fellow parishioner tried to abduct their child after discovering they planned to leave House of Prayer. The letter also alleged that most of the church's money was flowing into Dennis's pocket. That's the end of that article. So there's been a number of articles that have come out about this topic. It does look like all of these compounds are linked, or all the churches, and I think it's important to cover because it appears to still be active, and it's an ongoing case. And this next article I think is more recent. Is there a date on this one? June 29th and 24th. Oh no, so that first one was more recent. So this one has a more like personal angle, with talking to some witnesses. So this is on, it says Yahoo Sports, but then the Daily Beast right here. So maybe it's like the Daily Beast Origins, and it's being hosted by Yahoo here. I don't know. By Dan Leidenhall and Justin Worlich. Modern day Jim Jones cult in FBI raid targets vets, ex-parishioner says. FBI agents on Thursday stormed 3 churches across the South, all of which are located near military installations and have previously faced accusations of being cults. One, the Assembly of Prayer Christian Church in Augusta, Georgia, is situated less than 3 miles from Fort Gordon and has for years been accused of sinister activities. Now, one ex-member is speaking out, comparing the organization to the infamous People's Temple and its leader to Jim Jones, who convinced more than 900 of his followers to commit revolutionary suicide in 1978. Former parishioner Gladys Jordan told the Daily Beast on Friday that she hasn't been able to see her 28-year-old son, Cesar Vargas, since she left the church nearly 6 years ago. Basically, you leave the church and you're excommunicated, Jordan said. That's it. They separate you from your family. I haven't had contact with my son since I left in September 2016. Every time I call him, he doesn't even call me mom. He says, "Ma'am, how did you get this number?" Vargas, who has previously dismissed the cult label, is now some $50,000 in debt thanks to the church, where he serves as a minister, Jordan continued. He has never held a real job, she said, and dug himself into such a severe financial hole by spending money he didn't have on materials necessary to conduct services. And I know because my son still receives mail at my house, Jordan said, adding, the cult leader, Ronnie Dennis, is infatuated with Jim Jones. This is a modern-day Jim Jones cult. That's my scare, that he's going to take my son to another country and do the same thing that Jim Jones did. I thought that part was especially chilling. Like, who actually idolizes Jim Jones? Very weird. Dennis lives in Augusta, according to local reports. He has not been charged with a crime, and no arrests were reported following the raid. The Assembly of Prayer is also known as the House of Prayer, and the names are used interchangeably, Jordan said. The voicemail of Dennis's cell phone was full on Friday, and he was unable to be reached for comment. In 2020, advocacy group Veterans Education Success called for an investigation into allegations of abuses of the GI Bill program at the House of Prayer Christian churches seminaries. Veterans allege that the church targets veterans in order to access GI Bill funding, VA disability compensation, and VA home loans, according to a letter asking the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs to probe the organization. The church intentionally picks locations near military bases where it can draw from a steady stream of service members with steady paychecks and educational benefits under the GI Bill, Jordan alleged. They have a fraudulent Bible college and a so-called home for the soldiers, she told the Daily Beast. They bring them in and give them a home-cooked meal, and from there they have them lie to the VA to get into the Bible college. They steal their benefits, and they never get a diploma from there that's worth anything because it's not valid. In a statement to the Augusta Chronicle, a Fort Gordon spokesperson said Fort Gordon was aware of the organization called the Assembly of Prayer Church through our law enforcement channels, but the installation had no bans against the organization or any official dealings with them, despite their website's claims. The Assembly of Prayer Christian Church in Killeen, Texas, was also raided by federal agents early Thursday. The church stands just under 6 miles from Fort Hood, the most populous U.S. military installation on the planet. Dozens of reviews of the church on Google and Facebook make allegations that the congregation is a cult, which has habitually recruited Fort Hood soldiers, according to the Killeen Daily Herald. Amber Fitz-Randolph, a local resident and administrator of the Fort Hood Fallen Facebook page, which honors servicemen who have died, told the Daily Beast in a text message that from what she had heard from within the Fort Hood community, House of Prayer / Assembly of Prayer is absolutely a cult. The ones in Killeen were sneaking into barracks at all hours to torment and threaten soldiers who wanted to stop going or wouldn't give them enough money, said Fitz-Randolph. And on Thursday morning, federal agents executed a separate warrant on the House of Prayer Church in Hinesville, Georgia, which is located around 6 miles from Fort Stewart. In a statement, the FBI told WTOC it was conducting a court-authorized search warrant and that no arrests had been made. The station also reported that the church has been the subject of controversy for years, with former members sharing allegations of abuse and leaders isolating worshipers from their families. The concern is that he has made us merchandise, former member Jessica Wright told WTOC. It's no longer a church, it's just a fraudulent money-making empire. I think the first part of her statement there, she's referring to like the members. She's made us merchandise. Yeah. The FBI confirmed to KWTX that the raids in Hinesville and Augusta were connected, but it's not yet clear if the Killeen search was part of the same investigation. To Jordan, the raids came as welcome news, she told the Daily Beast. I tell everybody if the FBI wants to pull all of us in a room, each and every one of us will give our testimony about House of Prayer. So yeah, that's still ongoing. Hopefully I have another update in the next episode. But if you remember back to the BITE model, we see 2 elements of like culty red flags here with the financial abuse and then also the cutting off of family members or like non-members, non-followers. So yes, I would definitely say there's some cult activity there. So this is another big one that came out recently that has to do with Google. And this is on inputmag.com by Andrew Paul. The lawsuit claims Google division is staffed by members of New Age cults. The Fellowship of Friends apparently runs deep in the Google Developer Studio, and they'd like to keep it that way. Try not to set this down too loudly so the mic doesn't pick it up, but oh my god, look at the sun coming in here. So eminent. A pretentious and problematic New Age society has reportedly set up shop within multiple levels of the Google Developer Studio, GDS, and they very much intend to remain there. At least that's what a new lawsuit filed on behalf of a former employee alleges, according to a recent deep dive from the New York Times. The Fellowship of Friends, formed in 1970 by a former San Francisco Bay Area schoolteacher named Robert Earl Burton, is purportedly available to anyone interested in pursuing the spiritual work of awakening, and claims that a higher consciousness can be attained by surrounding oneself with fine arts and culture like operas, ballets, antiques, paintings, and wine. But at least 12 of them have worked or are currently working with the Google silo dedicated to producing video content showcasing the company's various technologies, while many other associates have been employed in various third-party capacities for events, catering, and even massages. Kevin Lloyd, previously a video producer at GDS, claims he was fired last year for voicing concerns about the fellowship's influence and role in the department. According to Lloyd in his lawsuit, both the fellowship and a contractor provider for Google named Advanced Systems Group have consistently relied on poorly regulated hiring laws to bring friends, capitalized, so members of the group, aboard in various capacities in and around the company. It's so pervasive that Google Developer Studios boss Peter Lubbers, or Lubers, I don't know, is a documented longtime member of the fellowship, implying he makes well into the 5 or even 6 figures. Fellowship members frequently donate 10% of their income to the organization, by the way. It doesn't help matters that the Fellowship of Friends founder, Burton, settled 2 sexual misconduct lawsuits. Misconduct. Did I say that right? I can't really hear myself, so yeah. Out of court in 1984 and 1996, at least one of which involved a minor. Disgusting. Additionally, one fellowship member and GDS video producer, Gabe Panel, I can't say any of these names. Nobody has a normal name to any of these articles, allegedly had a history of inappropriate work behavior like showing up intoxicated to shoots and berating fellow staffers. All in all, it certainly sounds like a pretty insufferable group of people to work alongside. Judging from a previously successful lawsuit on similar discrimination grounds filed against Lubbers and his former employer, it sounds like Lloyd has a decent shot of coming out on top here. This is another article. So that was pretty short, but this article didn't really dive into the details of the lawsuit. As far as I know, is this ex-employee, from what I saw in another article, he filed for emotional damages after getting fired from Google or let go or whatever. But I don't really see that much in here about the cult itself and what exactly they're doing at work that is influenced from the cults. Other than the history of inappropriate work behavior, like showing up intoxicated and berating fellow staffers. Yeah, I would like to know more. So yeah, it's another one we will keep our eye on and hopefully have some follow-up in a coming episode. Next up on Vice, by Tamlin McGee, Redditors revived an obscure cult that believes a mass harvesting of souls is imminent. Amid the pandemic, a trance channeling group from the 1980s has seen a resurgence online, but why now? UFO watchers are convinced the world is closer than ever to official disclosure of alien contact, thanks to unprecedented acknowledgement from the U.S. military that something spooky is going on. But according to a growing group of Redditors, we've made extraterrestrial contact already way back in the 1980s during a series of trans-channeling sessions in Louisville, Kentucky. According to these true believers, the 5-part transcripts of these sessions establish a unifying theory known as the Law of One, which supposedly holds the answers to everything from the origins of Bigfoot to what became of Atlantis and how to survive an upcoming mass harvest of souls. That's really hard for me to say. Mass harvest of souls. Also, I don't know why these groups are always about Atlantis. It's you really need to know that Atlantis was real that bad. Anyway, first published in 1991, these once obscure texts are collectively called the raw material. And I realized as I was like glancing over this before I went live that is that like a play on words, like raw material, RAW, but it's spelled like Ra, the sun god of ancient Egypt. Not super clever, but did I finish that sentence? They've sparked a recent resurgence of interest online. Over the course of the pandemic, the r/Law of One subreddit soared from roughly 300 to over 10,000 members who discussed the intricacies of these texts. For many, the raw material serves as a bedrock for their own moral frameworks, inspiring debate topics such as, what's your opinion of Elon Musk in the Law of One context? Answer, selfish, but ultimately a tool of the greater good. And what does the Law of One say about limb regeneration? Answer, it's complicated. The texts are the fruits of years of paranormal investigation between engineering professor Don Elkins and one of his students, Carla Ruckert. Ruckert claims she made alien contact in 1980 and suddenly began to speak strangely, describing herself as the voice of a sixth density, non-human intelligence and group consciousness called Ra. She began claiming to communicate on behalf of something called the Confederation of Planets, a group of 53 civilizations, all in service to the one infinite creator and the law of one, the unity of all things. In other words, this is a collective of ascended alien souls that evolved into a united being, a pure thought on the planet Venus many years ago. Contained in the tapes of Ruckert's Cosmic Tete-a-Tete, the originals of which are available on YouTube, is an all-encompassing system of beliefs that covers every New Age staple from chakras, quote, ray energies, to the importance of raising one's, quote, vibrations. There's creation stories, reincarnation, and karmic realignment. The tapes also contain a classic good versus evil story with extra intergalactic steps, the benevolent confederation of planets on one side and the malevolent Orion group on the other. I don't know if I said that right. Orion. Figures from both even occasionally manifest here on our silly planet as wanderers, like Nikola Tesla, one of the good guys, or Genghis Khan, the evil Orion group. Hidden in the vast material are wild claims such as that Bigfoot is from the Maldek planetary sphere and part of a species currently working through karmic restitutions. Inhabiting deep underground passages, infamous occultist Aleister Crowley is engaged in a, quote, healing process somewhere within our inner planes. LSD is a vibration sound complex that can be helpful in establishing contact with extraterrestrials, and that the Great Pyramids were constructed entirely by thought. And they linked one of their videos here. Definitely not going to watch it. It's 40 minutes long. I think it's just audio, but yeah, it's called The Raw Contact, if you would like to look that up. The transcripts are drenched in a baffling lexicon of cosmic jargon, but perhaps the linchpin of the ideology is the hierarchical system of densities, i.e. the types of consciousness it describes. We measly humans are a third density, self-aware creatures yet to ascend to a more compassionate plane. Next up the chain are wiser life forms, like the Na'vi from Avatar. Higher up the food chain are beings of pure thought and unity like Ra. Think of the end of Evangelion after everyone is blasted into orange goo. To progress up the density ladder, us humans must pass a karmic test at the end of a 75,000-year cosmic cycle, which is imminent, apparently. This is really smacking of Scientology at this point, but not quite as insidious. So far, anyway. Where we reincarnate as a fourth density being will ultimately hinge on whether we're self-serving. I'm just laughing at density. Yeah. A fourth density which will ultimately hinge on whether we're self-serving, in which case we'll end up on a grisly Orion-affiliated planet or serve others, where we'll reincarnate in a much nicer place. Those who have picked a team where this rapture-like harvest happens will climb the density ladder and become higher beings. The rest of us will reincarnate on another crummy third density planet filled with despair, war, and Funko Pops. Just like this one. Nearly 70 years since Elkins began this mission, L/L Research, a non-profit organization dedicated to discovering and sharing information to aid in the spiritual evolution of humankind, is still going strong. Today it continues to explore the intricacies of channeling and publishes the supposed results, but it also holds events and sells merchandise like #4DAF coffee cups. That's fourth density as fuck. Directors Gary Bean and Austin Bridges attempted to walk me through the key takeaways of the material, although they conceded it's a little tough to summarize. In a Zoom call and lengthy back and forth email exchange, Bean and Bridges said that, if anything, the overarching message is one about the foundational unity of the entire universe. Our purpose here is to evolve spiritually, to discover who and what we really are. But with so many religious groups throughout history offering similar reflections on spiritual purpose, why are these texts perhaps the fringe of the fringe and never actually promoted by L/L Research, enjoying a resurgence of interest online, especially when there's every chance they could be, well, entirely made up? Jim McCarty, a surviving member of the Raw sessions who transcribed and edited them, maintains they're legitimate. As I transcribed the session, I was just blown away by the beauty and precision of the message, McCarty told Motherboard. He added that while Carla Ruckert had a great grasp of English through Raw, she was saying words she simply didn't know. A skeptic, though, might say that all of the material could have been put together first and then recorded. Sometimes Elkins and Ruckert seem to be daring the reader into disbelief. The two starred in B-movies that lampooned New Age UFO groups, and in their first book, The Secrets of the UFO, which lays the groundwork for the raw material, Elkins writes on the very first page, "The information in this book is either nonsense or the most centrally important thing that you could possibly learn." Meanwhile, in the intro to the raw material, Ruckert recalls Elkins's praise for an inherent gullibility when it comes to successful channeling. So it sounds like they're massive trolls. But for some reason, that doesn't matter. Reddit user Invisible Fireball, who has a scientific materialist background but developed an interest in deploying belief as a tool, said that he stumbled into the Law of One subreddit during the height of the COVID-19 crisis and suspended his disbelief around channeled material. "I have not been disappointed," he told Motherboard. "Even if channeling is an entirely fraudulent enterprise of equal parts cynical theater and creative writing, it can still be worth the read, and it may not be that. For others, the growing discourse around unidentified aerial phenomenon drew them to the material. Coming to the realization of the reality of off-world civilization really opened my mind up a bit," Danny, 42, from Nebraska said. "There was much more going on, and things weren't as simple as I had been told as a kid going to church." While he doesn't study the material regularly, nor take it literally, he likes the idea that we're all the expression of the same being, that we are all God experiencing itself, a little like the Bill Hicks bit about a news anchor on LSD. "I think it's beautiful and makes sense to me," said Danny. "I enjoy the thought experiments presented by the notions of our human past and life on other civilizations." Others do not take the material literally as well as metaphysically. A Reddit user named IRABN told Motherboard that they spent years exploring most religions but found the Law of One following an interest in UFOs, the pyramids, and alternative healing, before coming to the conclusion that they were a wanderer from the sixth density with a mission on Earth to serve others. There's a video linked here, but I don't think it's directly related. Chosen ones and eschatological terrors are, of course, part and parcel of many religions, monotheistic and otherwise. But even doomsday sermonizing and with an intergalactic twist wasn't entirely new when Elkins, McCarty, and Ruckert transcribed the material. In 1954, an English taxi driver, George King, claimed to have received messages from outer space, informing him that he was to become the voice of interplanetary parliament. The Etheria Society that he founded continues to send its communiques back into space via a unique kind of prayer circle. A decade prior, a Bulgarian mystic practicing esoteric Christianity called Peter Dunov warned that galactic waves were en route to obliterate life on Earth. Those weren't on board with the upcoming new era would find themselves reincarnated somewhere else, while those that made the cut would ascend. Since the Victorian times, seances and spirits, supposedly channeled material, has fallen in and out of fashion. It seems to once again be enjoying a resurgence. Getting tired. With a distinctly digital distribution. Take it to Instagram and search channeling, 418,000 posts, or enter common channeling targets like the supposed civilizations of the Lemurians or Pleiadians on YouTube, and you'll see videos with many thousands of views. Common among all these contacts are individuals whose evidence is more or less their word. Despite the often outlandish claims, experts suggest the majority of these channeling instruments believe they really are embodying visitors from distant galaxies. 95% are not conscious frauds, Professor of Psychology Ray Hyman told the LA Times in 1986 article about a yuppie-tinged resurgence of interest in channeling. That could be because the mechanics of channeling remain opaque. Charlotte E. Dean at the University of Hertfordshire, who has led studies into paranormal belief systems, told Motherboard it's somewhat unclear about what exactly occurs during these experiences. Dean posits that channeling of entities could be related to disassociation, though. Individuals who are prone to disassociation prone to dissociation often become absorbed in tasks or situations and may experience some sensations of detachment from themselves or the world around them. She said, these channeling and dissociative experiences have also been associated with aspects of cognition such as heightened suggestibility, fantasy proneness, and susceptibility to false memories. Oh my god, that word tripped me up there. As for why this kind of material is picking up right now, it could have something to do with the mass trauma events like the pandemic. Studies show that at least for some people, spirituality can help them process difficult events. The closeness of death during the First World War, for example, may have led to a rise in the spiritualist church. With such a huge increase in subscribers during the pandemic, Heidi Campbell, from the director of the Department of New Media, Religion, and Digital Culture Studies at Texas A&M University, suggests the ongoing impact of restrictions could also have simply compelled people into finding a sense of community or newfound spirituality online. This extra time, combined with loneliness, motivated people to see what possibilities the internet had to offer in terms of social interaction and spiritual engagement. Campbell told Motherboard, many online communities experienced notable growth and expansion during this time. It's not surprising that digital religious movements or groups did as well. Okay. There's only a couple more paragraphs. I thought there was a lot left. Whatever you think of the Orion group, dolphin densities, group consciousnesses, or Bigfoot, the Law of One offers an interesting case study in lived religion, where spiritual seekers interpret and live in their own spiritual codes, building out their cosmologies in real time, and sometimes creating secondary sources themselves. According to Dean, channeling experiences have been shown to have positive implications for psychological well-being and social adjustment. And whether or not those beliefs include battling cosmic evil, the overarching message remains one of peace, love, harmony, and service to others. Of course, like all religions, not everyone will approach the raw material with pure intentions. Especially when anyone can claim to be speaking on behalf of unseen forces. Carl Sagan famously criticized one of the more prominent channeling practitioners who claimed to contact beings from the Pleistocene era. But while it's true that even benign spiritual beliefs can lead to fixation and abuse, these messages from supposedly inhuman entities reveal a deep desire for unity and selflessness, and you can't get much more human than that. Okay, let me take a sip. So I can totally see why this is being labeled as a cult. And kind of under the loose definitions it is, where it's like a fringe belief system. And like they said, it's just kind of like these people who think they're channeling stuff. There's not really any evidence of things we would look for from the bite model. Like, there was no evidence presented of people being excluded or excommunicated. There was no evidence of financial abuse, sexual abuse. It's mostly just people being like, I talk to aliens. No, I talk to aliens type of thing. So it seems fairly harmless at this point, and like they said, something that's repeated itself throughout history. So that went by faster than I thought. I think I speak pretty fast, like faster than I expect to. I pick out all these articles thinking they're going to be like an hour long show. However, my vocal stamina, it's not great. Like, if you think about how long you can talk for, you're usually talking to your friends or family, and that you're only talking for like a few words at a time and then listen to someone else, and then you have like a rest. But when you're just reading stuff out loud, I don't know how you keep going for like a long period of time. I used to do vocal lessons for singing, not speaking, and I would practice for like 2 or 3 hours at a time. And even now, like, the strain I feel on my voice is worse than when I used to have to practice that. So I don't know why. I picked out one more thing to show you all here, as I'm really interested in reading cult-related books. So this one got picked up by my Google alert. And I've read a handful of these that are on this list, and then there's a bunch of others that I'm really interested in. So I thought I would just share. So this is on, what did I click on? I clicked on an ad or something. Bookriot.com. And if you would like to go back and like reference the actual list, it's the URL is bookriot.com/books-about-cults. And this is by Isabel Pop. Cult Classics, 32 Fascinating Books About Cults. Imagine making a Venn diagram of the kinds of nonfiction you're consistently drawn to. For me, there's a deep overlap between books about cults, books about scammers, and true crime books. This is all just kind of like blah, blah, blah. So let's just skip to the list. So the first list is nonfiction. Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism by Amanda Montell. And I'm not going to read all of the descriptions because, like I said, the vocal irritation is here. But Amanda Montell, she has a podcast about not really like established cults, like some of the episodes are about that, but more like everyday things that have culty characteristics, and she explains it. And the podcast name is Sounds Like a Cult, I believe. And she also has another book. It doesn't say here, does it? She published a book before this, but she seems very smart, and I'm definitely interested to read this. Next is Member of the Family by Diane Lake. I haven't read this one. It's about like her experience in the Manson family. Just personally, I'm kind of tired of hearing about Charles Manson. Like, I feel like I've already heard everything about him. Although I did read a really good book titled The Girls, which is like, I think it's a fictionalized account of someone who was in the Manson family. But that was good. This one I haven't heard of before. Broken Faith, Inside the Word of Faith Fellowship, One of America's Most Dangerous Cults by Mitch Weiss. And it says if you're interested in women cult leaders, which I thought was quite interesting because you don't come across that often. It says the cult leader is Jane Whaley, who subjects her followers to brutal abuse and controls their every move. This one I have read, Hollywood Park by Mikkel Jolett. Lead singer of the band. Okay, so Mikkel Jolett, lead singer of the for the band The Airborne Toxic Event was born into the Church of Synanon. From what I... What? Yeah. Sorry. From what I read in the book, it seems similar to Children of God. But this book is his memoir, and it's not really about the cult. Like, he leaves, like, his family leaves when he's 5 or 6. It says he and his mother escaped, but life outside the cult was a struggle for them as well, as this heartbreaking and poetic memoir details. This book is super good. The audiobook is super good. I definitely recommend it, but it is not really about cults or the group. It's about his life and basically how he was raised. The first 6 years of his life impacted him and his mom and their relationship for the rest of their lives. So yeah. This one I haven't heard of. Slonim Woods 9, a memoir by Daniel Barben-Levin. Oh, this is the Sarah Lawrence case. Oh, that's interesting. So we talked about that in the early episodes of Cult News. So there's that. Apocalypse Child, A Life in End Times by Flor Edwards. This one is Children of God. If you can hear my cat snoring, she's adorable. This one I have read also. This one is really good. A World in Flames, A Black Boyhood in a White Supremacist Doomsday Cult by Gerald Walker. So yeah, exactly what it says there. His parents were blind, and they became members of this local white supremacist church. His 2 Black American parents. And again, it's another book where there's not much about the actual inner workings of the cult and their belief system and all that. It's more about his memoir of like his experiences as a kid, and there is some stuff about like his interactions with like people outside of the group and how it affected him. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. This one I have, as well as the next one. I have copies, but I haven't read them yet. Talking to Strangers, a memoir of my escape from a cult by Marianne Butcher or Boucher, I'm not sure. She was part of the Unification Church called the Moonies. That's like the nickname. And this one is a graphic memoir, so it's like a comic book. And this one, Daughter of Gloria Vale, My Life in a Religious Cult by Lilia Tarawa, which takes place in New Zealand. I've read an article about this place before, but I've never read a whole book about it. This one is my absolute favorite. It is so interesting. This is Seductive Poison, a Jonestown survivor story of life and death in the People's Temple by Deborah Layton. I'll just read you the whole description. The story of Jonestown is honestly incredibly heartbreaking and complex. In larger cultures, it's been reduced to drinking the Kool-Aid, which is a ghoulish thing to say flippantly when 918 people died. I do recommend, with some reservations, The Road to Jonestown as a recent written, deeply researched book. But if you're looking for a survivor's story, this one was originally published in 1997, chronicles life for someone high up in the People's Temple whose pleas for help went unheard. This one was also like my primary research source for my book, which is not out yet. But Deborah Layton was a member of People's Temple. She joined at a young age, and she was like 18, I think. And she became very close with Jim Jones, one of his like inner circle. She was definitely like within the top 4 or 5 members of the entire cult. And if you read this book, certain things will be dispelled, like they said, like that are often presented in the media in regards to Jonestown, where, you know, people like to talk about Jonestown, whereas like it was so crazy how brainwashed all of the people were, and how could he convince these people to commit suicide. And then so Deborah dispels this in that, letting us know that they had guns and these people were held at gunpoint. So they either drank the poison or they got shot. And then also Jim had done practice runs many times for this scenario where he would encourage everyone to drink poison, and then after they all had, he would reveal to them that it wasn't actually poison. So he would test them all the time until this final time that it happened. But this one's like I don't, just for without revealing what my book is about, it's imperative to what I needed to know to build the cult that's in my book, which is fiction. And then I've also read this one that they mentioned, The Road to Jonestown. So that one is more of like a biography of Jim Jones, if I'm thinking of the right book. But it's interesting as well. I wouldn't say it's as interesting, but definitely gives you a detailed background on like where Jim Jones came from and the whole build-up of the group until its final moments. This one I haven't read, Underground, The Tokyo Gas Attack and the Japanese Psyche by Haruki Murakami. That's the Om Shinrikyo cult. This one is another one I have, but I haven't read yet. Seeing a pattern here. Breaking Free, How I Escaped Polygamy, the FLDS Cult, and My Father, Warren Jeffs by Rachel Jeffs. So Warren Jeffs we talked about on the previous episode. I think I've definitely read Under the Banner of Heaven, another FLDS like expose book. I don't think I read Prophet's Prey, but Under the Banner of Heaven I think is written by a journalist, so it's a rather like impersonal account. But there's a number of other memoirs of escapees from the FLDS that you can read. This one I've never heard of, In the Shadow of the Moons, My Life in the Reverend Sun Myung Moon's Family by Nansuk Hong. So again, about the Moonies. My Life in Orange by Tim Guest. And this one is related to the documentary Wild Wild Country, which is about the Rajneeshpuram. So this one is about someone who was brought to the group at age 6. Never heard of that one. This one I have. Again, I haven't read. I think last month this was like part of the Amazon Prime thing. Like if you have Prime, you can pick from a group of books each month, like one of them to download for free. But yeah, The Community by N. Jamila Chisholm. She was brought in, or I'm assuming it's brought into a black Muslim cult in Brooklyn called Nuwaubian Nation, founded by Dwight York. I haven't really heard of that one, but I wonder if it's related to the Nation of Islam. But it says it is a narrative. Thread of this narrative is the repugnant treatment of Muslims in New York following the September 11th terrorist attacks. So yeah, that sounds interesting. And then this one is a different list of adult fiction about cults, which I'm also very interested in. Very interested in what authors come up with, creatively, like what kind of weird cults they come up with. This one I can't remember if I have, because this style of cover is being used so often now. I might have it. I'm not sure. The Incendiaries by R.O. Kwan. I haven't read it yet, though. So, yeah, that's why I don't know. Should I read these descriptions? It's so long. Kismet by Amina Akhtar, and it says August 1st, so I guess it's coming out. It's not out yet. Okay, I'll just read them. There's definitely something cult about wellness, right? It's the nakedly ambitious gurus claiming to have all the answers while emptying pockets. Definitely agree with that. This one sounds really interesting. Velorio by Xavier Navarro Aquino, or Javier. I'm not sure. Javier. Another defining characteristic of cults is their ability to thrive in situations where people are struggling. So similar to Jonestown Memoria, the cult in Velorio draws in people in the wake of Hurricane Maria's destruction of Puerto Rico. So that sounds really interesting that it's based on like a real life event, not advent. Loving Day by Matt Johnson. It says this book is comedic. Parable of the Sower. I've read this one by Octavia E. Butler. It is very, very creepy. Although this book came out a number of decades ago, maybe like 40 years ago now, I think. Yeah, it's creepy how contemporary it feels with recent events. I think they noted that here. It might feel a little uncanny with its failing social fabric and the president who wants to make America great again. Yeah. The Leftovers by Tom Perrotta. There's a television adaptation on HBO. The silent cigarette-smoking cult that springs up in the aftermath is a fascinating sort of anti-cult that embraces nihilism. Trust Exercise by Susan Choi. It's centered on Mr. Kingsley, the acting teacher at a competitive performance arts high school. I haven't read any of these. Bunny by Mona Awad. I have seen this one everywhere, and I would really like to get it. It's dark academia, perhaps inspired by The Secret History, which I have read. A book about an outsider encountering a cadre of students with a charismatic professor who go overboard with their appreciation of the classics. So yeah, it definitely sounds very similar to The Secret History. Sorrowland by Rivers Solomon. Do not miss this gripping and passionate novel that uses a cult as a metaphor for what the United States does to Black bodies. First, Become Ashes by K.M. Zapara. What if you'd been raised to harness magic so that you could fight monsters when you come of age? Okay, but what if it all of that was a lie and you were in a cult the whole time? That kind of reminds me of what the hell is it called? Something Grace? The Grace Year. It's a YA novel. And it's kind of a similar sounding premise where they raise girls to think they're like evil witches in this like creepy cults. And then like the main character figures out that it's all a lie. Storm of Locusts by Rebecca Roanhorse. It's the sequel to Trail of Lightning, which I had the audiobook of. Again, I have not listened to it. This book I have, and I have read. This book is awesome. The Sacred Lies of Minnow Bly by Stephanie Oakes. Minnow Bly endured intense suffering at the hands of her fellow cult members, including having her hands cut off. So when she escapes and is subsequently arrested for assault, she lands in a juvenile detention center. Meanwhile, her former prophet has been murdered and her compound burned down. If Minnow tells the authorities about her dark past, she may finally be able to get free. Can't recommend it enough. The Liar's Daughter by Megan Cooley Peterson. Haven't heard of this one. Those Who Pray by Jennifer Moffett. I keep seeing this one all over the place too. I wasn't totally aware that it's about a cult. Emily is a shy college freshman in the 90s, lonely in her ivy-clad college until she finds the kingdom. Her summer trip to Italy makes scary turns and someone dies. Like many of the best books about cults, this provides a chilling view of the increasing manipulation someone experiences when lured into a cult. It kind of looks like a graphic novel from this cover, but I'm pretty sure it's like a regular novel. Eden West by Pete Hotman. Jacob, raised in Nod, the land of grace. When his faith is tested by peeks into the outside world, he has to grapple with a new knowledge. This is a book that will resonate with a lot of people who've left any sort of faith. This next one I just got. I pre-ordered this book because it sounds so good. Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White. Just look at the cover. Again, another cover kind of makes it look like a graphic novel, but it's a novel. But it sounds super good. What if you're a doomsday cult, but you are also the doomsday weapon itself, or yourself? This is life for 16-year-old trans boy Benji, infected with a bioweapon turning him into a monster. He's escaped his eco-fascist cult, and he's looking for safety among a ragtag group of queer rebels. If you like the idea of unleashing righteous fury against oppressors, here you go. This is the apocalyptic cult body horror novel you've been waiting for. And then this is the last one, Agnes at the End of the World by Kelly McWilliams. It's fascinating to see how our current pandemic affects how we read, given a book like coming out in the middle of it. Given a book like coming out in the middle of it, what? What if the world-ending events your prophet predicted might actually be happening? Turns out it won't deter Agnes, who's known for a while that prayer alone isn't going to save her diabetic brother. Yeah, so that's the end of that. It left out a couple other books that I really like, that I read last year. The first one being The Atmospherians by Isle McElroy. Their name on the book is Alex McElroy or McElroy, I'm not sure. But they changed their name recently. And then The Lightness, I think it's called. Yeah, The Lightness by Emily Temple. There are two others I would add to the list. There's a lot other like older novels, but it looked like most of these were like more recently published, other than the Parable of the Sower. And then in the Margaret Atwood series, the sequels to Oryx and Crake, there's a kind of interesting cult in those ones. But it's almost completely dark in here now. So thank you so much for watching. This will, as always, be archived up on YouTube, because Twitch only archives for like 2 weeks, I think. So I will be archiving this episode along with all the past episodes on the Word Grub channel. One word, WORDGRUB. Excuse me. So thank you so much for watching, and see you next time with more cult news.